Hello, I'm Nima Rajan, and welcome to Northwest Newsweek. Northwest Region OPP have taken over the investigation into the death of a 14-year-old boy on the Fort William First Nation. But police are remaining tight-lipped about whether foul play is suspected. Adam Spade was first reported missing from a residence on the Fort William First Nation last Thursday. The Anishinaabe Police Service issued a missing persons alert on Friday, just before midnight. And on Saturday, his body was recovered from Lake Superior near Carp River Road. The OPP's Criminal Investigations Branch is now leading the probe with help from the APS. Officers could be seen combing the area Monday where Spade's body was located. The area was taped off, and police won't say whether they're looking for anything specific in the water or on the shoreline. The OPP declined our request for an interview even after the post-mortem was completed earlier this week. Spade was from the Martin Falls First Nation. Anyone with information is asked to contact the OPP. Tragic news out of Cochrane this week after a teenager from Pikangikum First Nation was struck and killed by a vehicle. The incident occurred in the early morning hours Wednesday on Highway 11. The victim, 16-year-old Kelsey Strang, was pronounced dead at the scene. Strang was one of 2,000 residents who were evacuated as a result of a forest fire which still burns near the community. An investigation into the collision continues. Well, there's been lots of attention recently placed upon single-use plastics, such as grocery bags, straws, and water bottles. And while much of that attention has been on a national and international scale, there are also regional groups looking to curb the usage of plastics. The Thunder Bay District Municipal League is one of those groups. The specific issue of single-use plastics taking up more and more space within landfills was the key topic of discussion during a meeting last week in Dorian. League President and Marathon Mayor Rick Dumas says it's a growing problem which leaves municipalities on the hook to pay to close and open landfill sites. He is suggesting a system that allows purchasers to return empty bottles to the vendor.
So those products will be brought back to the local vendors, and those vendors will then return them through their supplier. So the supply trucks come to our communities every week, drop off full bottles of product, and yet they go back empty. So we think that's a great opportunity. I'm glad that the federal government recognized that. But as far as the marathon in the region, I think there's opportunities for us to look at how we eliminate those, but also not in a hasty way, but also just talking to our vendors and working with the public.
To lead by example, Marathon Council directed administration to phase out single-use bottles of water where it can within the township. Firefighters with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry continue to battle major forest fires near Pickle Lake and Pikangikum. And there is some good news on both fronts. The blaze that caused the Pikangikum First Nation to evacuate around half of its residents is now categorized as being held. There's been significant rainfall in the last few days, which has helped keep the fire at around 3,800 hectares. 10 fire crews are now extinguishing hot spots and have begun removing sprinklers from the building. Thunder Bay Fire Rescue officials say the 350 evacuees here should be able to head home, but likely not until next week. Meanwhile, in Pickle Lake, rain has eased the situation for the 11 crews working to put out the nearby forest fire. The status of the 800-hectare blaze has been changed to held. The MNR has clear-cut a 2.5-kilometer path through the forest, which is called a fire guard, aimed at stopping the blaze from spreading to critical areas. Well, most of the highways in northwestern Ontario are 2 lanes, with the occasional passing lane. But with more accidents causing extensive road closures, the province has been looking into ways of improving the safety and reliability of highways through twinning them. While groundwork has already been laid out to twin the highway from the Manitoba border to Kenora, fully twinning the highways of the north is still a long way to go. But one group out of the northeastern Ontario has an alternative solution. Adam Riley has more.
We're hoping that this model can be a new model for northern Ontario roads.
If you drive anywhere in the northwest, you are traveling on 2-lane highways, save for a pair of stretches between Thunder Bay and Nipigon. But there is a new model being proposed that could lead to a reduction in road fatalities of up to 79%.
What's called a 2+1 road model, which has been used extensively in Europe and particularly in Sweden and Ireland.
Mark Wilson is with Going the Extra Mile for Safety, or GEMS. He says for years GEMS has been advocating with the province to twin Highway 11 in the North Bay area, but the idea has always been turned down. But a 2+1 road model checks a pair of high-priority boxes for all areas with a two-lane road system.
And the advantage of a 2+1 road is it can be built at a much lower cost than twinning, and it can also has equivalent safety records to a divided highway.
Wilson made the presentation to mayors, councillors, and other municipal representatives during the annual NOMA conference in Thunder Bay earlier this year, and it made several in attendance raise their eyebrows with intrigue. Among them was Fort Frances Mayor June Call, who calls the proposal an interesting one.
I had never heard of it before, but I think it's a great idea, especially for the Northwest, because there are so many trucks on the highway. The big trucks are one of the hugest problems we have in a lot of respects.
The model also caught the attention of Dryden Mayor Greg Wilson, who has raised the issue of highway safety with the province. He says he spoke with provincial ministers while at NOMA to not forget about the highway between Dryden and Kenora.
Historically, that section of road in Canada, that section of road between Kenora and Dryden has been one of the worst in terms of number of accidents over the decades. So I think that needs to be addressed, and I was just hoping that the ministers that were present would consider that.
Wilson says he too likes the 2+1 road model, which could be a cost-effective way of improving safety along the highway. Adam Riley, TBT News.
Employees at the Ignis sawmill won't be coming back to work this week as expected. The Resolute Forest Products facility has been shut down since mid-April and won't reopen until July at the earliest. The company blames poor market conditions and an issue with the sawmill's kilns. A Resolute spokesperson says they initially projected 2 months of downtime due to a shortage of logs from the very wet weather in the fall, winter, and spring. Now, under that plan, the mill would have reopened by this week. However, the North American lumber market has taken a downturn in recent months, leading to lower prices and sales volumes. The mill is now expected to resume production sometime next month. Resolute is working with its Ignis employees to provide job opportunities at the company's Atikokan and Thunder Bay mills in the meantime. Workers are also eligible for unemployment benefits. Business along the main street of Fort Frances has been hit with a higher than average number of shoplifters as of late, according to Rainy River OPPs. In response, OPP have increased the number of patrols they do off Scott Street, where a majority of the smaller towns' shops are located. In addition to patrols, the OPP Safeguard program is working with businesses to better ways to protect themselves against shoplifters. Community Safety Officer Constable Yenta Davidson says shoplifting numbers from the first quarter of 2019 are much higher than the average.
From January 1st until March 31st, 2019, we've received 35 calls for service that were shoplifting calls, which in the last year, for example, we have received approximately 100 calls. So it is a noticeable increase in the community for a small town.
Davidson says businesses can sign up to have an assessment done by an auxiliary officer to see if any measures can be taken to make sure the area is more secure. When we come back, mayors from around the Great Lakes gather to put a stop to an aquatic invader. They're strange-looking, invasive, and have almost entered the Great Lakes. Asian carp have been making their way up the Mississippi River for years now, and they have the potential to destroy commercial and sport fishing industries. This is why a group of state officials and mayors, including some from our region, have now signed a declaration to stop the fish. Adam Riley has more.
If the Asian carp are ever able to establish themselves in the Great Lakes, we will have lost the war.
You've probably seen videos like this, fish jumping out of the water as a boat skims across the surface. And while it looks entertaining, the Asian carp is setting off alarm bells for those who care for the health of the Great Lakes. Nipigon Mayor Richard Harvey says Asian carp are the harbingers of death for any aquatic ecosystem.
Asian carp can be weighing up to over 100 pounds, and they eat 40%. They can eat 40% of their body weight every single day, which if you take that into consideration, and they reproduce and they have no natural predators in this area. So every indication from areas where they've gotten into is they destroy the entire ecosystem.
Harvey says the fish could enter the Great Lakes through Lake Michigan by swimming north up the Mississippi River, which normally wasn't connected.
Because of changes, it now is connected. They made the channels, they put diversions in, and this has become a really serious problem.
There are already signs up warning boaters, anglers, and other water users about several invasive species which have already been spotted in the Great Lakes. But adding Asian carp to that list is hopefully not going to happen. Harvey, along with several other mayors from both sides of the Great Lakes, were in Sheboygan, Wisconsin last week to sign a declaration to stop Asian carp.
You know, we're very, very pleased with the fact that we now do have a lead out of the states. One of the states has stepped forward and said they will take the lead on this. We have within the various states, the governors are all behind it.
Harvey says the carp have managed to evade and breach every form of physical barrier that doesn't restrict the flow of water, up to and including electrified fencing. He adds that if a physical barrier isn't put in place that stops the flow of water between the Mississippi River and the Great Lakes, the arrival of Asian carp is not an if, but when. Adam Riley, TBT News.
A divisional court ruling has dealt a blow to the efforts of the Kenora Area First Nation, who is trying to establish a casino on its reserve. Washishka Nigam Nation went to court in Toronto in April seeking a judicial review of the process that led to the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation awarding Gateway Casinos the license for Kenora. Kenora is part of the so-called Northern Bundle of centers that are approved for gaming operations, which includes Gateway's casino in Thunder Bay. The company has stated that it will spend $21 million to build a gaming center in Kenora that will open next year. In 2016, OLG selected Gateway as the operator over another bidder for a term of at least 20 years. After Gateway got the nod from the OLG, the First Nation approached it in 2017 to see if the company would consider placing its casino on their lands and discuss a revenue-sharing arrangement. When nothing developed out of that, WAN filed a request for judicial review of the government's and OLG's actions related to the Kenora Casino, based on a number of grounds. In dismissing the application, 3 justices ruled that the provincial cabinet's decision in 2012 to allow a casino in Kenora and to develop it through a competitive bidding process is not subject to review in court. As of Wednesday, WAN's lawyer had received no instructions from the First Nation as to whether to file an appeal. OLG declined to comment until the window for an appeal is closed. A spokesperson for Gateway did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Well, there was a win for Red Rock last week as the provincial government announced that it will play host to one of the 7 new LCBO convenience outlets here in the Northwest. Last year, the town of 900 was left in the lurch after the standalone LCBO was closed and demolished in a matter of months, with the only solution to travel to nearby Nipigon to purchase alcohol. There are 2 possible locations for the new outlet stores inside either the town's grocery store or the nearby convenience store. Red Rock Mayor Gary Nelson says while he is happy a store is coming back to the community, the timing of the rollout for the new outlet isn't the greatest.
They said they can put in the licenses in July, and probably an inspector or something would be in town to check the buildings out in August. So this year I'm hoping that we were hoping all along that something would happen within the holiday, the summer months, but I think it's going to be after August before we really get something here.
The province wants to have the new outlets in place by August of 2020. The newly formed Anishinaabe Business Professional Association is kicking off its first event this week, and the group is matchmaking Indigenous communities and businesses with potential partners in order to increase their impact. And as Carmen Wong tells us, it's a pathway for First Nations to capitalize on the region's resource economy while fostering economic reconciliation.
Much like speed dating, the business matching event is designed to connect similar interests, stimulate discussion, and create relationships. Close to 100 delegates from various First Nations communities met with potential business partners to find ways to collaborate in existing or planned projects. President of the Anishinaabe Business Professional Association, Jason Rasevich, says it's an opportunity for First Nations to establish business relationships that can lead to mutually beneficial agreements.
It really assists these businesses with moving mountains and moving key milestones to be able to get past some of the barriers to market or barriers to accessing current opportunities.
Those are just some of the challenges businesses in the North face. Managing partner at Advanced Business Match, Katrin Harry, says they want to create viable and equitable opportunities to improve the socioeconomic well-being and quality of life of First Nation peoples.
If we're successful in supporting small business development in Indigenous communities, we will support social change, and we will be able to be part of the solution that creates economic equality.
President of TBT Engineering, Robert Furnett, wants to be part of that solution. He says synergistic relationships with Indigenous business and community leadership is the way forward.
Energy projects, East-West Tie, the Wate Power, there's ongoing mining investments and capital development, so there's huge opportunities right now. And by working collaboratively with the First Nation communities, we're stronger, we're more effective, and more engaging.
Carmen Wong, TBT News.
Coming up after the break, Marathon opens up its new waterfront attraction. 2 decades ago, the town of Marathon was looking to improve its waterfront area for recreational use. And while the aspirations of building a marina with a breakwall proved to be too costly, that hasn't stopped the community from developing an attractive site for boaters. The Cummings Beach area was acquired by the town from the former mill just prior to the company declaring bankruptcy. Since then, the area has been developed to include ample parking for both cars and boats and a fish cleaning station, as well as providing those without a boat a chance to land the big one from Lake Superior. Mayor Rick Dumas is hoping residents and tourists make use of the new docks throughout the summer and beyond.
It was about a $300,000 project that we looked at down there, and we're very happy that we received those grant monies from the provincial and federal governments. At the same time, we would encourage anybody else who is looking at utilizing that facility to go down and enjoy it, and go fishing in our great lake of Lake Superior. But the Fish Festival this weekend should be a great kickoff, Al Dixon Memorial, and that'll be the first use of these new docks.
Residents who are planning on attending town council meetings in Red Rock will have to make sure they're at the right venue. For years, council has been meeting in the basement of the town hall. However, the only access to the council chambers is down a not-so-accessible flight of stairs. With the implementation of accessibility laws in the province and little money to renovate the building, Red Rock Council has moved down to the Marina's Interpretive Center on the waterfront. Mayor Gray Nelson says the center is a beautiful building with modern amenities.
It's got the screen, the great big automatic screen that comes down, the very best of audio system. So it's a good move we're making. And down there, you got the automatic door openers. They're wide enough for a wheelchair accessible, and everybody can take it into the meeting now.
Nelson says initially, council only intended to spend the summer months in the Interpretive Center, but he now thinks that will become the permanent location for meetings. Thunder Bay OPP say an American hunter who got lost north of Gulf Bay has been found safely. The call came in at around 4 o'clock yesterday morning that a 63-year-old man from Kansas had failed to return to camp after he was dropped off at a tree stand on Saturday afternoon. OPP set up a command post and a sound beacon in the area. The hunter followed the sound and safely exited the bush this morning. He did not require medical attention, but police say he was thirsty and hungry. Advancements in technology have allowed researchers to bring back a dated way of mineral exploration that is better for the environment and a company's bottom line. A workshop was held at Lakehead University on Thursday outlining what is currently being done at a test site in the region. This geophone is the instrument that provides a new way to study passive seismic techniques. Its counterpart, an active source technique, is more common in the mining sector, but is much costlier and harder on the environment. John McBride is a geologist with Stillwater Canada. He explains why they're able to rehash this technique thanks to advancements in other technologies.
It's been around for a very long time, but technology through lithium-ion batteries is improving. So the equipment we use has the battery life to actually be useful in the field. And also computing power has increased significantly to the point where all the data we collect can actually be processed now.
The ore deposits at the surface have been found and mined, so we have to find new deposits, and commonly they're buried. So our technique will help us find the new resources for industry, for future industry.
The project is only in its first stage. The new technique of passive seismic is currently being used near ore bodies in Marathon. The next stage will be a slightly different technique in Sweden. Some new firefighting technology was demonstrated in Thunder Bay this week, which could help remote First Nations better respond to fires in their communities. Many reserves in the Northwest struggle with fire response due to issues such as a lack of equipment or trained responders. Superior Strategies, an Indigenous-owned business based here in the city, is hoping new fire equipment they supply could help First Nations confront those challenges. These mobile units can be mounted on a pickup truck or light trailer and require only one person to spray foam or water on a fire. The company held an open house to show how the equipment works. They say the units come at about the 10th of the cost of a traditional fire truck.
Maybe the nearest community with firefighting capability is 25 minutes away. the house can be completely on the ground by that time. So with this equipment here, if nothing else, it'll buy some time, if not completely extinguish the fire.
A slightly less powerful model that can be pulled by an ATV or snowmobile is also available. It's an innovation that came as a response to feedback from remote communities. Sarah Zinn says several communities have already expressed interest in the equipment. And that'll do it for this edition of Northwest Newsweek. I'm Nima Rajan. Take care, everyone.